All right, everybody, welcome back to the second episode of the Mena's Minutes, and I'm reacting to the Friday episode with Biodude and Gus, and I'm recording this one in bed. I'm going to be recording Mena's Minutes in lots of different spaces, so you got me in bed here on Saturday night. And firstly, I have to say, really thrilled to be back on the death list. So I haven't been on the Kirk's death list for a long time, but I was mentioned again. This was for my solo episode, the first episode of Mena's Minutes. And I think Kirk hoped I'd be eaten by a whale, that I'd be like paddleboarding and a whale would just come up and eat me. And yeah, that'd be a good way to go, very quick. And just a little appetizer for a whale, I'd be. But yeah, good to get on Kirk's death list. I have a feeling I've missed the last 2 years of being on the death list, or not many mentions. I think in the first few years of the show, I was on the death list several times. I think one year I almost led the list. So I've really worked hard to get off that list on such a regular basis. But I'm back on there now. And yeah, I'll be staying away from the ocean just in case there are any whales around. So, look, I'm reacting to the show with Biodude and Gus, and tough day for Biodude to be in there. Kirk clearly doesn't like him. Biodude's an idiot. He's been doing some terrible things on Twitter, and he clearly hates the show, and he's been infected by the trolls. And then Kirk wasn't messing around. He's had a tough week, Kirk, and when he saw Biodude there, I just think he wasn't ready for. He just wasn't going to take any shit. So Biodude was basically run over, a bit like Kane the day before. It's been one of those weeks where Kirk has just not been willing to fuck around, and Biodude really. I don't know how he felt when he left there. I've seen some of his tweets recently, and I've seen his left the trolls chat. But that was a tough one for Biodude. He was copping it from all angles, and yeah, Biodude, really tough show for him. I can't work out who had a tougher show, whether it was Biodude or Kane this week. But yeah, absolutely bad show from Biodude. So also Jeff Lowe rang in and they were talking about the dozen, which I'll get to, but he was saying that Biodude and Kane just don't get the show. And it's a fair call from Jeff. Um, there's certainly a few things that go above their heads at the moment. But yeah, Jeff was in rare form, actually. Some good jokes to start. And yeah, he was on fire. And I thought was fairly supportive of Kirk, considering Kirk has quit the dozen. Jeff was fairly supportive. And I think Kirk did the right thing quitting the dozen. After whether you agree with Kirk or not, I think his stance about the Internet Invitational. If you're gonna say you're not doing barstool stuff, I don't think the dozen should be given an exception. And I think as well, KMS works better when KMS is an island and all the guns are pointed out every direction. That's the way the show started, and maybe it's going to go back that way. So, Kirk can fight with everyone in Barstool. He can not do any of those events, and probably better. Clemmer was really upset. I don't think Clemmer quite grasps, that this is probably not going to be reversed. And I hope it's not reversed. I think Kirk, if he wants to save face here, he just has to dig in. He just has to be a stubborn prick and not do any of this stuff now. He can't do the Internet Invitational, even if they ask him. I think the ship has sailed on that, because he's in a no-win situation then, because he'll sort of go into it with, I guess, these weird expectations on him, having made such a fuss about not being there. And yeah, so I think the ship has sailed for the Internet Invitational. Kirk should just not backtrack, and he should absolutely just not do any of the Barstool events and make KMS what it used to be, on an island, the guns pointed out. And if at some point Dave Portnoy says to Kirk, fuck off, you're fired, your contract's terminated, then I'm here ready to make a subscription service work for Kirk Minahan. We can be banking millions. We can be printing money, and he won't have any of these hassles. Just on some of the call from Big Cat around this, I think Big Cat should be called Big Pussy instead, because he is such a pussy now. He won't say anything. He sits on this fence about everything. Just embarrassing. Like he's like supposed to be the boss of the company with Dave, and he's just a big pussy. Basically, said nothing on that call. You can tell he's petrified of Kirk. He is petrified of Kirk, KMS, and everything to do with it. He did not want to be on the phone. I don't think he likes Kirk anymore after the whole surviving thing, and just an absolutely abysmal call from Big Cat. He's not made for this world. He needs to stick with part of my take, which is safe for him. Big Cat is a big pussy. He should just stay safe. All right. Well, what else happened this week? Well, on Friday's show, sorry. So again, Kane saved the day this week because Justin and Carl had nothing all week. But Kane comes in, acts like a real asshole. Everybody hates him, and he can just absorb all that negativity. So I think Justin and Cullinane had a terrible week. I do think by the end of the week, Cullinane had shown some signs of improvement. So I think the third chairs next week look like good bookings. I know that might be dumb luck, but we've got Blind Mike on Monday with Brando, and I think we've got Ted and Montante. I know on Friday we've got Mike with someone. So look, they're better bookings than the ones I've had in the past. But overall, a pretty poor week for the producers. I have to say, Justin's got nothing at the moment. Absolutely nothing. And what I would do if I was Kirk, and this is where Kirk's missing this kind of guidance, I would just say to Justin next week, don't come in. Don't come in. And what I want you to do is just find stuff to do. When I hired you, you said you were going to do all these bits and stuff. Well, what's going on? You haven't done any of these. So, that's what I'd do if I was Kirk. I'd just motivate Justin. I said, don't come in and do something. Go and do something. And we'll call you. And we'll call you every show and see what you're up to. But be creative. Get some shit going. I don't want you in studio next week because you're doing nothing in studio. So why be here? I hired you as the guy that would drive to Delaware and do all that stuff. Well, you're not going to do it off your own initiative, so I'm just going to send you there. So that's what I'd probably do next week. Tough week for the producers. Look, I got to say it's hard to defend Kane at the moment. With everything that's been going on, but we'll work on things, myself and Kane. I'm his mentor. I don't think he's an asshole. I think alcohol is a factor. And look, that's no excuse. If you say heinous things, well, you shouldn't be drunk on a stream. Unfortunately, I missed his infamous 6 hours space. That time he was apparently saying all this stuff. I was busy working, so I wasn't there. So I don't actually know what he said. So it's hard for me to defend him or criticize him. But overall, I'd say we'll be looking inward. We'll be working on things, but he's not an asshole. And I think there's a lot of lies being told to Kirk about Kane. Like I know Kane is not really said things about people's kids or families. He's drunk and he says stupid things, but I don't think he's ever gone that far. And if he said anything like that, it's just shit that comes out wrong. It's not the way he meant it. But anyway, I'm not going to defend Kane anymore. It's not for me to do that. I've done that enough. It's up to him to clean his act up. I'm still a Caneiac, but he's got to pull his socks up and start to make things right. And I would think that's a stupid thing to do for them to think, oh, we won't get Kane in again. I would say Kane is like Mayo. You want them in occasionally. You can't have Mayo in all the time. You can't have Kane in all the time. But once every couple of months, that's a good sort of rhythm for them because everybody hates Kane. So it can give them a bit of a focus and get all of that out. And as well, a bit like Mayo, you can't have them in too much. So, Kirk was angry that I was saying, Kane keeps the world going. I was just saying Kane gets everybody going because everybody hates him. I wasn't saying that KMS needs Kane. Of course, if Kane went away, KMS wouldn't miss him at all. But compared to all the drips that go in there recently as third chairs, Kane actually gets people talking, it gets a reaction. And I think that's a good thing. I really enjoyed seeing what a terrible week Pat Ford had. Just an all-time shocking week for him, and it's got worse. I think he's bailed on practice today. I heard he was up till very late on spaces. There were spaces going all night. Pat Ford was seen in most of them till the very early hours of this morning, and now he's not at practice. It's just not a good look for Pat Ford, and he likes to pile on everybody, but he should be looking in the mirror. because he's got a lot of the same issues that Kane has right now. And I guess just the last thing, Kirk brought up my point about Blind Mike's name being on the show. I did say that with that would come some, profit share. So it wouldn't just be the name; you'd actually be giving him a share of profits. But I actually had forgotten that Blind Mike was strident in saying he doesn't want to take a paycheck from Dave Portnoy. But I think my broader point is, was Blind Mike valued enough? Was his contribution to the show valued enough by Kirk and the producers? I'm not sure it was. Maybe they couldn't have done anything at all to keep him, but that's my overall point. In hindsight, was his contribution to Camus valued enough by the people that matter? I'm not sure it was, because there seems to be disparity between the way the audience is feeling about Blind Mike's departure and the way Kirk's feeling. But that's it. Look, Kirk's had a tough week. It seems he's been in a pretty up and down mood all week. But basketball's heating up. The team is surging towards the game against New York Basketball, and I think they're going to win. I just you can't stop this team. There's too much heart in it. So, Team KMS, they're going to get their first win for cinema, and then they're going to retire, because that's the way it should be. All right, well, that is the Mena's Minutes. So thanks, everybody, for tuning in. Really appreciate it, and I'll be back soon.